I hear my magic. There we go. Okay, well, welcome everyone to our July 11th, 2023 9 a.m. Commissioner briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner Jordan is on Zoom this morning. The rest of us are here in the room and our executive management team, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Lori Mark.
Hello, good morning.
Hello.
I do have a small presentation, but what we're here to speak to you today about is we sent a letter with a formal request to be able to readjust the boundary line for the Sheriff's Office Training Center to be able to purchase some land next to them for our new SHREC facility. I have with me today my chair and vice chair. Chief Rohrbach is my chair. Chief Richmond is my vice chair. I also have Sheriff Knowles and Chief Ellis from the Spokane Valley here to answer any questions you guys might have about the co-location with them. And then this is my technical services director, Dusty Patrick. So I brought all the answers to your questions should you need them. So we'll go ahead and move to the presentation if I can. There we go. Actually, that's our AdCom study. We did send that to you. It's a more in-depth study of everything that we requested AdCom, who's an engineering company, to provide some information on what we're hoping to do and what we're looking for and whether or not that would be a good location for us to go to. So you can move to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so next slide. All right, so as I mentioned, we had AdCom do an engineering study in 2021, so about 2 years ago. When we consolidated in 2019 to the Spokane Regional Emergency Communications Center, it was pretty evident to us at that time that the facility that we're currently in was not going to be able to hold us very long and would not be beneficial to us for future growth. It was built in 2003. It is on the City of Spokane property. It's owned by the City of Spokane Fire Department and operated by them. So we are renters, so to speak, in that facility. It was built with the intent of having the 4 different centers in it, and the blueprint for it does not really allow for us to. We've done everything we can to try to make it so that we can have a regionalized approach, but we still have walls in between our groups, and it's a difficult task to get the intent of cross training and operational movement happening when you're kind of bifurcated within that building. So we asked AdCom to come in and tell us how big of a building would we need. And we asked them to take a look at the Sheriff's Office and what they were doing out in the West Plains and let us know if they thought that would be a safe place for us to do that. So based on their results and after many discussions with the SHREC board, we have determined that is where we would like to build the new SHREC facility. We're going to need about 22,500 square feet for the communication center and administration building. And then an additional building will be built on that property right next to us of about 8,500 square feet for our radio shop that is currently located on this campus in the DEM office. And it's the same property, just kind of next door to the Sheriff's Training Center and Small Arms Range. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm sure you guys know what SHREC does. We answer all the 911 calls, crime check, dispatch for everyone with the exception of Spokane Police Department, Cheney Police Department, and Spokane International Airport. So with that, we have quite a large group that we're doing service for and work for in the public safety realm, and we are continuing to grow, as I'm sure our law enforcement and fire partners can tell you, that our call volume is not going down, it is going up. We've seen a significant rise in calls in both crime check and call receiving since we consolidated in 2019, and we don't see that trending down anytime soon. So the need for more staff, the need for more space to be able to house that staff is very important to us. We've already outgrown our space. We have some of our employees, our report techs are working from home because we have no space in our center. We've got our training taking place in a different facility. So that can cause some problems with our training, but we're kind of spread all over the place. We've cubicled as much as we can in that building, and we've got people working in dual cubicles at this time. So we're trying our best to do what we can with the space that we have, but it's not very much. It cannot be renovated, it cannot be expanded. We're pretty close to the water line. Right behind us is the National Guard building, and then next door to us is the fire training center and their use of that for training needs. So we had asked a few years ago if there was a possibility to expand our parking lot, and we don't even have space to do that at this point. So we've grown as much as we can grow. And I believe the other issue that we'll bring forward is having our radio shop not in the same location as us is somewhat detrimental. We're lacking a little of continuity of operations right now because they're not co-located with us. So we're constantly having to go back and forth, and a lot of phone calls and all the miscommunication that can happen when you're not talking to a person in front of you. So it'll be beneficial for us to be able to have them next door to us for operational purposes locally, but also for our partners when they come to get their radio systems checked. They can also talk with dispatch about what their concerns are. So co-locating us would be a desired effect. Next slide. So the benefits, and I will actually look to Chief Ellis a little bit on this because I think there's some benefits for the sheriff's office for us to be co-located. But as I mentioned, operational resiliency, being able to build a facility that can house, what we're planning for now would house up to 200 employees. Right now we sit at about 130 or 132 when we're fully staffed. So, being able to grow and to expand and be able to include some of our future partners. One of the discussions occurring right now at the state is 988 there's a discussion about having 988 co-locate with 911 centers so that there is a mental health professional in the 911 center when we get some of those calls. Right now, if they were to ask us to do that, we don't have the space to accommodate that. So there's a lot of future opportunities. I will also mention that another discussion taking place at the state is looking at regionalized approaches to dispatch centers, and regionalized being multi-counties in one dispatch center. So when they look at the east side, looking at Spokane, possibly taking on some of our neighbors down the road and just funding that whole area as opposed to separate counties. And if that were, again, to be a conversation today, I wouldn't have the space to be able to do that. So there's a lot of future growth and future opportunities that we see that we are definitely going to need to expand and improve our space. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Chief Ellis.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's mutual benefits to both sides of the house for co-locating out there. This facility is built to the Air Force security standards, so it's a higher level. So that helps out with the Shrek facility as far as security purposes. All the permitting and soil surveys, all that kind of stuff is already done. And then I think from the sheriff's office perspective, this is a building that is not a 24/7 operation generally. So to be able to have a 24/7 operation like Shrek out there adds another set of eyes and ears to the facility and keeping it secure. So I think there's mutual benefit to co-locating out there.
And for us too, when we're looking at the cost of a new facility and what we're looking at wanting to spend, they've done a lot of the infrastructure work that we would need to be able to build out there. There's going to be shared parking lots, shared security, things like that. So that'll help us cut our costs in building, but also cut our costs going forward. So, next slide. So funding, where we currently sit right now, we have estimated this project to be about $25 million. That was in 2021, so we might have to adjust that as we go forward. But as I mentioned with the co-location with the sheriff's office, some of that might be cut in other areas. We currently have a reserve fund designated for our facility, and that reserve fund has $17 million today. We're estimating by the end of 2024 that we're going to add another $2.5 million to that. We have a guarantee of $2 million that we will be adding to that. The fire services, we're going to be seeing some savings last year in their user fees when the city of Spokane joined, but they chose to defer that and to put that into our reserve fund for our facility. So there's a guarantee of that $2 million. The $500,000 is kind of give or take right now on what our budget looks like. But as we sit today, we're estimating that an additional $500,000 from just general budget will be able to be added to that. We're expecting, and our goal is to have it fully funded by 2026 by tax revenue and savings and everything that we're trying to do with being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. However, if we don't quite meet that goal, we would hope to only take out a small loan, maybe a skip loan or something like that we could pay back pretty quickly, because we would like to have it mostly funded when we move in and start. So that's where we sit as far as our funding is concerned. I think last slide is next. I'm available if you have any questions, but I will say that the ask today is we would like to work with the county for a boundary line adjustment to be able to purchase that property from the county to start the process of planning and moving forward with the new facility.
Any questions? Mr. French?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all you do. You guys do a great job. And I mean, of all the things we hoped to achieve when we started down this road, you've done that and more. So thanks for your leadership, and thanks to all you guys and staff for the job you're doing. Current lease term, when does it expire?
I'm sorry, say that one more
The
time.
current lease with the city, when does it expire?
It has already expired.
So we're on a month-to-month with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And previously, the contract with them has been a year long. Each year it's
Okay,
re-upped.
so it just rotates over. Okay. And how much money have we been paying to the city for the lease of the space?
We haven't paid anything in the last few years as they have
Oh,
tried
good,
to
great.
adjust some things. We anticipate we'll be getting a bill soon from them. But it depends on our space allocation. So
Okay.
when they figure out exactly how much space we're taking up with the facility, we'll have a better idea of what that looks like. But anywhere between $250 and $350 a year.
Okay. And so in all your due diligence, have you already identified a consultant that can help in designing the new facility?
Not just yet. We're kind of waiting for approval of this, so we have a guarantee that we know where we're putting it, and
Okay.
we're going to move forward. We did work with AdCom Engineering as far as the size and the space, and we've done a couple of site visits. We're looking at a new CAD system right now, and as we've looked at this new CAD system, we've also picked some places that what they have the CAD we're looking for, but they've also in newer facilities. So we've been looking around at what other agencies have done in recent years for their new places, including Tacoma's brand new center, which is phenomenal. It's beautiful.
So, and then last question is, of the employees that you have now, are they oriented to where they're convenient to the existing facility and then moving it to the West Plains? Is that going to cause any staffing issues with your current staff in terms of having to travel out there as opposed to being down next to the current facility?
So we have had a few employees that raised the concern that it's further for them to drive. But it's all of our staff are kind of all over the place. So while it might be inconvenient for some others, it'll be a lot more convenient for others.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna end up with a balance and we'll see what they decide to do. I think for them, it's hard to know exactly what that's gonna look like because they don't make that drive every day to know if it's additional time, because we're, depending on if you're gaining this facility from freeway access, it might be a lot quicker than if you have to drive through the various streets in Spokane to get to it. So it'll just depend on
Okay.
where they're at and what's going forward. So,
Great, thanks.
Get stuck behind the train.
or get stuck behind the train every board meeting.
That's what you say.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
And Commissioner French, I will add that you've asked a couple different times about if it would be a good place if we could put a tower on there. We did meet with the FFA and put an application in.
Yeah.
We asked for a 140-foot tower, which is the current tower size that we have at our site.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we would need or more than we would need, and they did approve that as of right now.
Thank you, great.
Yeah, and by the time we actually go to build, we'll probably have to re-ask that.
Sure.
But as it sits right now, it is.
Yeah, I did have a conversation after our last meeting with Larry and said, is the tower here going to be a problem? He said, I don't think so, but I'm glad that they went through the process. Good,
Absolutely.
good to know.
So, what is on that piece of land, or it's owned by the county,
Spokane County, yes.
but is it being used by any other department at the county right now?
It's where our small arms range joint training facility is with the Air Force. And we're probably only using a third of the footprint. Really half. Half the footprint, yeah. Yep. So,
I know we had to take a portion of the streets road maintenance for the off-road vehicle training area, but this is on the other side? Okay.
different parcel. Yep. I think it's to the west of where the future E-Block might be. Correct. Yeah.
And it doesn't interfere with the bomb disposal area as well.
Yeah.
So that can still continue.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. No, thank you. Very, very excited for you. I know it's having been in that facility, having the walls and keeping everybody isolated is not the best way to run the facility, so excited. Scott?
And I have a privilege of serving on the Shrek board as well, so I'm very well informed on this and been working with Lori and Chief Orbach and the rest of the Shrek board. So we've been looking at, and I know Lori and Chief Ellis have been looking at the site as to how it might be split off. So we've got a pretty good idea of what a boundary line adjustment might look like. So based on this, we'd pursue that activity, draw out a boundary line adjustment, bring it back to the board for approval. And then we've got, because we recently, the county had to purchase that from the road department, we've got a pretty good idea of what value would be on that. So we could ascribe that to the section of it that we do a BLA, something like that, so.
Sorry, just a couple other questions. Are there any other functions of the county that we may want to move out to this area? Are we thinking ahead about how to accommodate, like, emergency management, et cetera? And also future growth, if we ended up wanting to partner with other agencies at the regional training facility? Okay, Sharon.
So one thing I know for sure that is part of our discussion is, particularly with the jail project, we're gonna have to land a sheriff's garage somewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be out at that parcel, it could be. I think the garage facility is a lot easier to put in other places as opposed to Shrek, right, with the limitations and the size that it is. So I'm not necessarily concerned about that being a showstopper. I think we have the space built in to expand the range if we need to. That locating Shrek out there would not necessarily be an issue for. I think another benefit of building this new facility and out there as well as with the jail expansion project, they're going to lose their radio shop space. And so this would be a solution to that as well, because it's currently housed in the DEM building, which, if the project goes forward the way it's proposed, is going to go away. So I think it offers us a lot of solutions to a couple different problems.
The other activity that is under discussion, they haven't moved forward. Well, it's moving forward, but it's moving forward at a very slow pace. The cities of Cheney, Airway Heights, and Medical Lake have talked about creating a kind of a regional government services facility out there. And that interchange at Craig and 902 seems to be the most convenient location for locating that facility. So that is a possibility. There's still a lot of hoops to jump through, but that's something that's on their radar as well. So when you talk about other entities, that would be one of the other entities that conceivably would be located out there. And then at one time, we talked about a fire training facility. I don't know where the conversations are, but
Moving slowly, but
Moving
the
slowly.
discussions continue.
Yeah.
As well as the potential for co-location with DEM.
So it's starting to coalesce as a regional governmental services site. So this would be consistent with that use.
I just bring that up as if we move forward with some design, making sure we place the facility so you can accommodate other future growth and uses. So not taking up the entire middle of the site. Yeah. Good to think about all these things that could happen.
Okay, so this is on our
Real
agenda.
quick,
Oh.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering, who are the other neighbors around in terms of the other parcels?
So to the east, you have the Rhodes gravel site. To the west, you have a commercial canine business, and then behind it is undeveloped. There's one trailer out there, but it's an undeveloped residential area, I guess. To the opposite side of 902 is owned by the airport.
think you guys about next steps.
Yes.
So, based on kind of feedback here, looks like it sounds like it's a positive thing, everyone's supportive of it, so we'll start working with Lori on doing a boundary line adjustment when we have that done, and then developing a PSA, and then we'll bring it back to the board, so probably in the next coming months. Yep.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
No, thank you very much. So I think,
Yeah, 2B is gonna come off, we need a little more time on working through a couple of items on that.
then George.
You just grab my guess really quick.
Okay.
Morning.
Right here is great.
Great.
I had some folks from Community Frameworks come down to sit with me during this briefing today. So effectively what we're looking to do is revise a funding award that the Board of County Commissioners had previously provided. This was back in September 21st of 2021. So Community Frameworks had asked for some funding to be able to do some expansion at their Rockwell apartments out in Spokane Valley. The intent was that there was going to be additional funding to be able to leverage additional units out there. That additional funding was not able to be secured. And so now Community Frameworks is asking if we can change the scope of the project so that that $850,000 award can be used to do some rehab work on the existing units of affordable housing out there. I think that this is one thing that often gets overlooked in affordable housing is the repair and maintenance of existing affordable housing stock. So I think that this is a reasonable request and bring it to you all for consideration. And then if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Apologies, I'm trying to locate where it is in our packet here, and I'm having
54.
54. Thank you. Like that.
I was going to say, don't say item 5 of 5.
Yeah.
We're not going there again.
54 of 163.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to start off?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a timeline on the funding, and that's why there's a need to reallocate? Or is there not an opportunity to try and get those matching dollars in the next year?
So I'll answer the funding first, and then Deb can speak to the other side. This is coming out of our local housing trust fund account. So these are document recording fees for affordable housing activities. So there's no restrictive timeline on that. So we have flexibility there. So
Yeah, and in terms of additional funding, so our original plan was to experiment with modular construction, to add between 8 and 12 units on some existing land that we have at the property. We did make one attempt to secure that funding, and that failed. So we just wanted to really refocus, and we really thought that preserving those 28 units for longer term affordability would be a great way to just switch out the scope and again, preserve those 28 units. We bought the property a number of years ago, and there wasn't a lot of money initially to do some rehab. Over the years, we've invested quite a bit of our own operating money into doing some capital needs, but this funding would allow us to really do the kind of rehab that's necessary for a property of this age, and again, to preserve it for the future. Right now, the county's funding is going to be expiring soon, so that gave 20 years of affordability. With this new scope, that would allow for another 20 years of affordability. So I think that, as George said, you know, in our housing ecosystems, we have two things. We have to build more housing, but we also have to preserve the existing housing. And so we would really suggest that this would be a great way for the county to invest in that strategy of preserving affordable housing.
There are two things when we're doing typically funding requests for affordable housing projects. One, do they have a clearly defined scope of work? And then two, do they have a capital needs assessment? Is it being driven by something that's already been evaluated? So Community Frameworks does have an existing capital needs assessment on the property. So the work that they've identified falls in line with that capital needs assessment for the property. And in Community Frameworks, in addition to the $850,000, they're leveraging an additional $150,000 of their capital to be able to do the most amount of work on the property they can.
So where is the property located? Trying to read through, it's like the city of Spokane Valley, but.
Do you have the address, Gerald?
I do. 14501 East Rockwell Avenue is one example. The way the property is set up, each individual unit has a discrete address. That's one that will put you in focus in terms of where the 5-building property is located.
Okay, and so where's the general area of that? I'm sorry, out in the valley.
General area?
Millwood, Trent, Kaiser Aluminum, that area.
Yeah, so if you go a little, what would it be? South of like that whole area, it would kind of be situated like south of Kaiser.
Can you, the address one more time?
14501 East Rockwell.
Kind of north central valley.
14501. East Rockwell. Just north of Trent.
What is the age of the, Jerome is our asset manager, what is the age of the property?
It was built in approximately 1967.
There it is on the screen.
And how many units in the property?
28. And if you wanted, Jerome can kind of give you an idea of what the scope of work is, if that would be helpful to you.
It says here, connection to city sewer services, so it's not currently connected to sewer.
Just a few units, that's really not the main focus
Okay.
of the scope. The main focus of the scope is, updating the interior units, renovating kitchens, bathrooms, new flooring, cabinets, countertops, fixtures, tub surrounds, and then doing spot replacement of wood siding and paint, spot replacement of deck landings, repair or replace carports and garages, repair and replace community amenities, including a playground, and then security system.
And then is this just a request coming directly to you, or was this a request for proposals that went out?
This is effectively amending a request for proposal that we haven't entered into contract with Community Frameworks as we were waiting for them to secure the full capital stack. As they weren't able to do that, now they came to us and said, what can we do with the existing award? And so this is just some creative thinking about how we can use these funds set aside for Rockwell Apartments.
Thank you.
And we will be looking in the future at thinking about adding units. We really think the idea of modular construction could really add value to creating new affordable housing. But right now, I think the priority needs to be, let's get this stabilized and in really good condition.
If I may punctuate what Deb is saying, if we fail to secure this funding for rehab purpose, we will need to look at reaching out to a private lender, which will mean our rent controls will go away, which will mean the affordable housing piece is now off the table, and those units are removed from the affordable housing ecosystem.
Commissioner Jordan?
Can you just remind me, I see in the cover sheet, it says the source of funding is the Spokane County Housing Trust Fund. Can you remind me the source of that and how it works, what it supports?
Yeah, so this is, it comes from, I don't know what, I know it as House Bill 2060. So they're document recording fees. It was a state bill back in the early 2000s to help build affordable housing. So we've got funds that have been committed, and then we've got some funds that have been uncommitted there. So that's the source.
And do we know, maybe I could get kind of a sheet describing the total yearly collection on that and what it supports throughout the system? Is that something you could provide?
Yeah, that'll be something I'll try and bring next Monday when we have kind of an overall budget conversation.
That's part of the funding that, yeah, we'll be talking about, that is looked at for the Spokane Unite purpose.
Oh, perfect. Got it. Thank you.
So just for my education, so when you, basically, if you touch a unit with new dollars and do any kind of rehab, it then kickstarts another 20 years of affordability? Like, is there a threshold for how much you have to spend for that to happen?
Yeah, it depends more on the funding source. So like home is the most restrictive, that typically has those 20-year affordability periods. You can negotiate some additional terms beyond that, depending on the scope and size of the investment. But 2060, I don't think that was written into state law. I don't know, Deb, if you.
That would be our intention regardless of the rules, as to if we can get this funding and maybe do some renegotiating on the terms and that kind of thing. That would always be our intention, to maintain affordability as long as possible.
Typically, there will be some type of a hook in a contract that says the expectation is that there's a period of affordability.
So that could be in the contract between the county and community frameworks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Then I'm assuming this is on the consent agenda for next week.
Next week.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah, if you can stay.
Yep.
We are gonna move up, Scott has a miscellaneous item 3B, the low income housing tax credit program RFP.
That's the one, the RFP, the combined RFP with the city, that's
Okay,
from
thank
the
you.
state.
All right, yes. All right, I'm up to speed now. I can only process one thing at a time. Yeah, so this is a request for proposal that we're putting out. This is an annual action that the county has done in partnership with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Effectively, the Housing Finance Commission is asking all counties throughout the state to identify a project. They get so many applications for these tax credits that they're saying, please have a local process that will help select your best project to move forward, so that the Housing Finance Commission isn't having to comb through so many applications. So last year, the city of Spokane and Spokane County partnered to put out a request for proposal. There was a team of staff from the city, the county, Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium, and then the Housing Authority that met to review the applications and then make a funding recommendation to, well, maybe not a funding recommendation, but a recommendation as the best application from our region to go forward to the Housing Finance Commission, which ultimately ended up being a project from the Housing Authority for Haifumian. And so we kicked off the request for proposal process on Friday, sent out an email to all of our folks on the distribution list to let them know that we have an application process that's open right now. It's set to close on August 4th. And so one of the things that we did is just as a way of bringing broader knowledge, we know for sure through the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium that we have 2 applicants that are ready to go. SNAP and then Catholic Charities both have projects ready for submission. But we also wanted to make sure that the general public was aware outside of the traditional affordable housing providers. We want to have broad awareness of the different opportunities that we present. And so just put together with the communications team a briefing, or not briefing, but a press release to go out to just make sure that the public was aware of this opportunity. So any developers or anything that might be interested in affordable housing, it was an attempt to just get that information out there beyond our typical RFP distribution list.
Commissioner French.
So how does this tie into the state's low-income housing tax credits?
So, so this is for the 9%. This is the coveted 9% tax credits. So the Housing Finance Commission will review all the applications, then make an ultimate recommendation on those projects. I think they typically send those awards, or at least the notification of the awards, come out end of the year, first part of January. So I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly.
Well, kind of, sort of. I mean, I've been involved in a number of cycles through the state, and I did not know that the state now passed this on to the counties to do this, because the state got themselves wrapped around the axle a number of times in terms of how they were making the allocations and who they were making the allocations to, and were they really doing their work best project, or were they just continuing to fund best applicants? So I'm assuming you guys have got policies in place that identify how you're going to rank the projects as they come in, so that you can make a determination as to where the money should go, because that was what became muddy for the state.
Yeah, great point. And so it's been about 3 years, is my understanding, when the Housing Finance Commission turned it over to local counties to make those determinations. So yeah, ultimately, you all find your best, bring it into the pool, and then they'll select from there. We do have a scoring rubric and just different process to be able to evaluate and then make that recommendation onto the Housing Finance Commission.
Okay.
Is it a ranked list, or do you just submit one applicant?
They ask that you submit one application.
Is it from each county, or is it a region?
Yeah, each county does.
So just want to make sure there was awareness by the commissioners, because this was a shift within the last couple of years for a single kind of combined joint effort by each county to bring forward one. So what George and I talked about is, after the RFP closes and they do their scoring, a touch back with the commissioner to say, hey, here's who the applicants were, here's what the scoring evaluation was, here's what looked like it was the top proposal that came, cream rises to the top, and then just share that with you before it's going back to the Housing Finance Commission.
Correct. Yeah, in the past, I think staff have sent the letter on making that recommendation on behalf, and we want to just make sure that you all have eyes on that as well.
Yeah. In a perfect world, what Scott described as how it should work, it was not working that way. It became very, very politicized and very contentious for a while, and some really good projects got sidelined because the state agency had relationships that they continued to nurture despite the quality of projects. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves.
Because then at the state level, as this commission reviews them, are they, I guess it's a matter of how much funding they have and how then those projects rank.
Yeah, statewide, it's a large pool of funds, but once you start divvying up with the expense of affordable housing, there's a lot of limitations there.
Because we're not doing one in every county, they're
Correct.
having to reduce that number.
Yeah.
Because they're getting 39 proposals.
Yeah, Spokane County historically has done very well. Catholic Charities has been able to get a lot of projects. The Haifu Mien last year was a really exciting one, because that was the first time in a while that we actually had a project that was going to providing kind of that stabilization of affordable housing for a more senior demographic without an exclusive homeless tie to it. So that was neat that we were able to do something different there. We've heard that from the public quite a bit, that it'd be great to have greater diversity in how we're developing affordable housing. So was nice to see that.
What's your anticipated timeline for this? I mean, as far as applicants, the review, picking a number one, and then the state making their decision on whether they receive the funds?
Yeah, so I can take us through our gate. On the state side, I'll just kind of estimate by the end of the year. So applications are due to us by August 4th. And then after that, we'll do our internal scoring review process with the 4 folks that make up kind of our review committee. And I think there's opportunity there to kind of polish that up a little bit as well. And so after that, then I think our recommendations due to the state by maybe mid-September, thereabouts. So we'll have everything wrapped up in time and sent off to the state prior to that. We'll make sure and come to you all before we do send that recommendation off to the state.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of value there as well, and not just having a letter from some random guy like me, but to have the power of the commissioners behind that recommendation as well.
And then the intention, as George mentioned, he said, we've got our known affordable housing entities who are aware of this already, but an opportunity to send just a broader communication across the community for others that may not be aware of this, just to make sure there's good awareness. So before this went out, we want to make sure the commissioners knew the background of it, how this came about, how's the process looking differently this year, and what's the purpose behind the shared communication or broader communication.
Yeah, there was a period of time where a lot of the state funds and allocations were going to one entity. And because of that, other entities that wanted to get into the industry were being challenged in terms of trying to find access to funding. And so it limited us to one entity. And so that became part of the political process is, do you want to just provide one entity and you provide all the funding to them, or do you want to provide a variety of entities and share the funding and be able to grow the industry as opposed to supporting one industry? So that was part of the politics that evolved and got very, very messy with a number of projects. And we had projects in the county here that did not survive that process. So, yeah.
I think my sense is they've given it back to the regional level, local level to make some recommendations. And by only sending in one up, then this is our top.
So it's nice also you just don't have that local competition at the state level. Usually more power behind one project.
Very good, thank you, appreciate that. Thanks for pivoting.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
George said, I just wanted to say that he's more than some random guy to us.
Oh, how about that?
Very good, thank you. Okay, Matt, you're next up on the agenda.
Good morning.
Good morning, nice to see you, it seems like it's been a while.
I know. Summer, I guess. So we got 2 quick items. The first one's an establishment. Thanks, Ron. This next slide shows it. It's the North Spokane Costco. These roads, I think some of you know, were formed by TIFs, paid for by TIFs. And this is actually the formal process of naming them. If you've been out there, the road names are like North Frontage Road, things like that we knew were temporary, but they didn't have a name scheme at the time. The new developer, I believe, Greenstone, weighed in on these road names and worked with our emergency services folks to come up with Mellon and Rinshaw as the 2 road names. So that's what we're going with. I just wanted to bring that to you. And this is the formal establishment for taking over maintenance. We've been maintaining them anyway, but they needed to get formally established. So this is that process. Happy to answer any questions.
Who has been maintaining them?
We have.
We have been doing it. Okay. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a shift. I was just going to say that's, I mean, there few roads on the north side, I think, see as much traffic as these 2 roads do.
At least to the first entrance.
I just want to make sure that, okay, so just that we can keep up with the snow plowing in particular when that time of year rolls around. Because there's still thousands of cars a day that are looping through those two roads to get to the parking lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of our main ones. It's a little inconvenient, obviously. It's an island a little bit off of that state route, but we hit it, I think, when we're hitting Farwell and Hastings and all that. So they'll swing down there and it is a roundabout, so it
Yeah.
makes it easy to get in and out for them, and they'll continue to maintain it.
Okay.
That's actually, just so you all know, that's really common for us. When they're public roads and they get established, sometimes the establishment can really draw out if we have a punch list and the contractor's not being responsive. But we will oftentimes put these county roads on our maintenance list ahead of establishment just because somebody has to take care of the winter operations and things. So that's pretty typical. We do try and push the establishment on as quickly as possible, but a lot of the schedule is out of our hands with the construction end of things. So anyway, anything else? Okay, the next one is a proposed vacation. This is up, if you're familiar with Stevens Creek, and I know Commissioner Cooney is. This is a little piece of unopened right-of-way between the end of Big Rock Road and Stevens Creek. You can see it's on the backside of Browns Mountain. The aerial here doesn't really do us justice. It is extremely steep. I believe the applicant for the vacation is Kent Clausen, who I think you know, and our position is not to vacate it. We would recommend holding on to this right away. Frankly, it's not buildable in its current configuration. There is a ton of topography here. And I think Kent would like to clean up his property. I think there's a structure in the middle of the right of way and at that north little notch. And we're not opposed to looking at a different alignment, maybe doing a vacation and change or something that makes sense. But long-term, we could see emergency services might like just even a single lane road for ingress egress during emergent situations. So we would recommend to the board not vacating the road at this time, and we'll have a better conversation with Kent when it's convenient for him and just see where he's at on it and what his goals are and try and accommodate that. But just to strictly vacate it without getting some additional right away for some, and I mean, it is hypothetical, I'm not gonna argue that. It's a unlikely connection to happen anytime soon, but right now we have more options than if we vacate it. I don't wanna see us buying it back in the future, so.
Because the parcel to the north there, is that conservation land?
He owns all three of those. He owns the pieces that it's running through with, well, the entire thing that's shown in red runs through
Okay.
his three parcels.
So he owns all the three parcels to the north.
Yeah, well, the big one running north that, the red line runs through to the west and east. I don't remember Conservation Futures when I was just kind of poking around, but I believe it's all privately held, those three parcels.
Okay, just because with the trailhead at the end of Stevens Creek, I just wasn't sure how that feeds into this.
Yeah, it really doesn't now, and
Okay,
again, our need is fairly hypothetical, but it's not non-existent. So I would rather see us do some kind of exchange, vacation and change for property and keep some means of making an east-west connection up there. Because I mean, in a fire season or a fire situation, you could feature a fire moving very quickly up this hillside and people needing options to get out. So it seems prudent to try and hang on to some ability to create a connection there in the future.
Commissioner French. No.
I'm good.
Okay,
That's all I got.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, good to see you. Okay, so. Good morning, Ben.
Hi, Commissioner.
Welcome. You are up next.
Okay. Thanks to a couple of other folks joining us here.
Very good.
Ben Bradable, Water Programs Manager for Public Works, and Anna Thomas Call is our Project Manager for the county's Regional Water Reclamation Facility. And then Rob Lindsay, Environmental Services Administrator. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about this project. This is coming to you with a request to move forward with a investment grade audit of some energy equipment at the water reclamation facility, and we are looking to use a contract that's provided by the Department the State Department of Enterprise Services, DES, that exists. The state has a contract with a number of firms that you can look at your facility, and they'll do an audit of how you use energy and make recommendations to see if you can do better. And if they come up with ideas that are not effective, that won't save energy or save money, then you don't have to pay for the service that happens, the study. But if they do, they're guaranteed to pay themselves back through whatever mechanism the county chooses to go forward. And the county has used this before. We changed out, for example, in the Public Works building, went through and changed the lights to be more efficient and used this contract. So it's been used in the past. It's a standing contract that we have with the Department of Enterprise Services. So what we're looking at the water reclamation facility is to look at how we use renewable natural gas. Right now we take biogas, it's methane that comes off of our anaerobic digesters. We use that to burn it, make electricity through microturbines, and also collect the heat and power the system. And it works pretty good. But what we found out is there's other opportunities. There's more cost-effective opportunities to take that renewable natural gas, clean it, and sell it into the transportation sector. And that's where the best value is. And either in the state or you send it out of state, and you put it into a Vistas system, and so it doesn't actually go out of state. It gets wheeled through, and on paper it gets used at the most. Someone buys it from us at a higher cost, and so it's more valuable to us, or at least that's what we think. It's more valuable to us to do that instead of continue to do the microturbines that we use now. So that's the first one that we're proposing to work with McKinstry, the engineering firm in Spokane, to work on that. And then there's two others, and I can answer questions on that if you'd like, or go on to the next two other topics that are related to that. Either way.
Why don't you go ahead and do
next one.
yeah.
So next slide.
Do them, and then we'll do questions at the end.
And so the another one is the solar power generation. There's opportunities for putting solar panels at our water reclamation facility, and we have space there that's set aside for future construction. But some of it we think can be used to generate electricity, and this isn't new. Obviously, the solar panels aren't new, but the change is that there is better cost effectiveness for local governments through the Inflation Reduction Act. There's direct payments that the county can take advantage of to get essentially like a tax credit, but since we don't pay taxes, we can't get tax credits. And so it's this direct payment for local governments. So this makes it more cost effective, or in fact, it could make it cost effective to install solar to generate. And we'll be careful not to fill up our space that we want to use for expansion, so that the life of the solar panels can be used for their full term. But we think we have space, and we think we can be more efficient with that. And then the third idea that we have is this, the bottom image on here is looking north down what would be Havana Street if it crossed the Spokane River, but it doesn't. And it's where our outfall goes back to the Spokane River. And we have our 7 million gallons a day flowing north there. And the pipe was designed to actually put a turbine in and collect the energy that as it falls back to the Spokane River about 60 feet back. And so back from the treatment plant to the river. And it's just doing what it does, and it's flowing right there. And so we're going to look at installing a low head hydroelectric turbine into that. And it was envisioned from the beginning when this outfall line was installed, but at the time it wasn't cost effective. And so things have changed with renewable energy payments for those. And so it may be that this is cost effective. And so in this case, it may be just we install something in the pipe and then run the power to this building on the left side, which is the pump station that lifts the sewage up to the treatment plant, and then it would just reduce the cost of pumping up to the treatment plant. So McKinstry has brought these ideas to us and we've talked with them and put together a scope of work where they would do a study. And if we go to the next slide, it's kind of a phased approach where they would do a rough order of magnitude study for $81,000 to look at this, and we can then choose to go forward or not for each phase. And you can see the second phase, 3 of the different areas of energy generation. And then if it's all cost effective, we can go forward and roll those costs into the cost of construction. It's design build. McKinstry would design it and build it if we choose to go forward, or at any point we can say, no, we don't need to. We don't want to do this for whatever reason that might be. We would then pay McKinstry for their services. But alternatively, if it's not cost effective, and McKinstry can't say, yes, this is guaranteed to be cost effective, then we don't pay them for any of these pieces. So it will take a while to go through. We can come back and brief the board as we go to each phase, present how much the costs are. The county would be responsible for financing these to take them forward if that's what we choose to do. McKinstry will likely advise us on the most cost-effective way. They'll be looking at opportunities to make it cost-effective and advising us on that. But that's it for the presentation. We would come to you with a resolution to authorize approval of the agreement with Department of Enterprise Services, who then has the agreement with McKinstry to go forward with this study. So this first phase is $81,000 to look at cost effectiveness of these practices.
So thanks. So bringing the energy consultant in that whole process was one of the things I did when I first joined the county, and it's been very effective. We used it in this building, we used it in Public Works, a couple other facilities on the campus and stuff, and it is paid for itself. So certainly encourage continued use of that. Two things that I want to suggest that you look at. One, had a meeting with National Energy Commission 8 years ago, and talking about different ways to generate electricity and stuff. And in the Northeast, they have a system where they don't have hydroelectric dams, but what they do is they'll have a generator, they'll put water through it, collect the water, pump it back up, and it becomes a loop. And so if we've got water in this system, as you're looking at trying to gain efficiency out of that, you might look at, is there any merit to increasing the size of the generator and the pipe so that you can recirculate that water before you put it back into the river and generate more electricity? So I don't know what the numbers were, but I know that in the Northeast, of course, they pay more for electricity than we do. So that might be the variable that makes it attractive there, but not attractive here. But at least would encourage you to look at that as an option, as a way to generate additional electricity. So it's not just our outflow, but we're using our outflow multiple times before we put it in the river.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's, and that's being talked about regionally for pumped storage, as you pump it up the hill and then it runs down and then you pump it back up again.
That's what they do in the Northeast.
Yeah, and that's for, works for peaking, if you have energy production somewhere else to pump it. And so I think in this case, we're basically doing that. We're pumping the sewage up, cleaning it, and then discharging it. So we're essentially doing that with the discharge.
So the other thing is you're looking at continued improvements to the wastewater treatment facility, and I mentioned this to Scott yesterday. Last week, I think it was the EPA that finally issued findings on a technology that was developed in a research lab back there, where they can radiate PFAS and PFOS cells, explode them, that makes them then inert, and now they are not cancer causing, they're not a problem. And the technology was designed specifically for PFAS, PFOS, but they want to expand it to be able to use that same technology for other forever chemicals and stuff. And since there is now growing concern about levels and stuff, just want to make you aware of that research, that opportunity. And I look at, is there any way that, so they've approved the technology, now they're trying to scale it up because they want to be able to put it on municipal water systems. I think you saw the report where, a significant number of water systems throughout the country now are infected with PFAS, PFOS and stuff. So they're trying to find ways to be able to get rid of the chemical, or in this case, they just basically explode it. And and break it up, and then it becomes inert. Is there an opportunity, or should we be anticipating that if that technology is ramped up, that we could put that on the wastewater treatment facility and then become a point source to eliminate PFAS and PFAS out of the river? And with the toxic task force and everything else, this would be something that would be positive that we could do for the river, and inadvertently also improve the quality of the water at the aquifer for the city of Spokane and downstream. So wanted to put that on your radar as well as an opportunity for us to look at.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll just offer that right now there are a number of webinars, that come across our screen about PFAS. We're all dialing into those. I mean, we're all learning about this. I really appreciate your reference to the Toxics Task Force, which is morphing into now a community advisory committee.
Yeah.
Ecology has expressed interest to really expand the scope of the task force beyond PCBs and putting the thumb on the permits. And so, I believe that those sorts of technologies and discussions are going to come up in there. And so, we really appreciate your alert.
The report, it's a news report, they were talking about being able to expand the technology to other forever chemicals, but they also referenced the PCBs. Now, they had not done any testing on PCBs, but it's wishful thinking. But even just getting rid of the PFAS in the river, would make us.
Everything helps.
Everything helps, absolutely. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and Rob, I was gonna reach out to you. So last week I took a tour of Kaiser, and they're doing some innovative things with PCBs that they're looking to expand, where they're able to break it apart so it's not toxic any longer at a small scale.
Right.
But they're looking at increasing that, and they're working directly with Department of Ecology. And I asked them, I said, are you guys trying to patent this technology? And they're like, no, we're not.
Right.
We just
So-
want to stay in the river.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're aware of that.
Oh, we are. We're aware of that, and Kaiser has, expressed interest even in working with us, a while ago, and in looking at developing different technologies. And we kind of slow walked that a little bit through the task force, because I think the other dischargers weren't as interested in that at the time. But you bet. And, I'll just offer, though, from a watershed basis, when you look at the PCBs coming out of our plant versus Kaiser's or through their groundwater, from our standpoint, that's really where the effort needs to go right now, because our contribution is so much smaller, and we're way out on the asymptote now on dollars per molecule. And so, helping industries along really is where it's at right now. And that's where we can have the most bang for our buck, if you will, in reducing PCBs and improving water quality.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. What's the time frame that you're envisioning? And I'm wondering if there's a larger time frame to take advantage of Inflation Reduction Act payments, the 10-year law, anything like that. I was just curious. And then this might be more of a general question for the group. I'm encouraged to hear there's been some past energy audits, and that's great. I wonder if this is something we could do on even more facilities now that there seems to be more resources available coming down from the federal government to help with some of these efficiencies and cost savings.
So to answer the first question on timing for this is we have to be under construction to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act in 2024. End of 2024. We don't have to have it built, but we have to have it started. And so we'll be moving pretty quick to get decisions made on, and it's really focused on solar, where the solar has that requirement to make, you have to be moving to get that direct payment. So we'll be moving to make decisions on that. It doesn't have to be built, but has to be. And some of that's is order the solar panels, have signed the contract to move it forward, but it's next year for that. To answer the larger question on other opportunities, I guess I'm not going to volunteer to take them on. We can if they're there. For the treatment plant, as interesting is it's relatively new, and so it's got efficient pumps, and so there aren't a lot of upgrades that we see as available there in the short term. Other county infrastructure, there likely is other things that could be done.
The other facilities at our wastewater treatment facility are LEED certified already. They were built to those efficiency standards.
Yeah, when we did the energy audits, this is 10 years ago, it initially was tied into the remodel of the courthouse. They came and did the courthouse, they did public works building, they did the public health building, and the public safety building. So all the major buildings were already included in that original energy audit. Now, as price for energy increases, there's always an opportunity to come back and reassess whether there's opportunities to save. But we invested several $1 million in the upgrades for the courthouse, public works building, and even the public health building to take advantage of that. And the last I heard, it had paid off. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I was just thinking about if there's new opportunities to take advantage of new policy in addition. And if so, where would that analysis be happening? Is it part of the ongoing kind of capital planning that Mr. McMorris is working on? I just want to make sure that we aren't leaving anything on the table in terms of resources that are new and available.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner Jordan, we had, as a result of the House Bill 1257, Gil Halbert, our facilities director, has commissioned an energy audit for some of our buildings that are going to be underneath that requirement, and has identified a number of opportunities for the boiler system, our steam utilization, and whatnot. So those were shared with the commissioners, I think, last year, and it's something that we could come back and do a refresh with the 5 commissioners as to what the identified opportunities were. But I think it's a really good call out as now policies and funding opportunities from the federal government have continued to evolve, lining up some of what we've identified with, are there some grant opportunities out there? I think it's a really good call out.
Thank you. I think that'd be great to do a check-in and whether it's strategic planning or some other fashion, but thanks for the update.
I just wanted to give a commendation to the team here. These are cool technology opportunities, energy efficiency opportunities. I know they've been tracking this for years, and some of these were, some years ago, they were very nascent, early stage, not yet known to be proven out, and biogas is not a new one, but jumping on something when the timing's right and when we know more about it and the opportunities present itself. It was very even new with Avista. Could they take this type of grade renewable natural gas back into their system? So just great job for the team by continue to track this and jumping on the opportunities as they present themselves.
So, yeah, we'll follow up with a resolution, I think the 8th of August is.
Yeah, that'd be the next opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ron, you get to stay, but Mrs. Stewart coming, so I think you can probably grab her. Yeah, you can probably just stay there. I'm not sure.
Stay.
We'll see if they have a home.
Okay.
Just hang out here.
I'll be
the whole
flexible.
meeting.
I can do that.
Teresa, if you guys want to sit at the end there, that'd be great.
Well, Tori sends her apologies that she couldn't be here, but you got 2 for 1.
There we go. Appreciate that. So Troy, I'm going to have you guys introduce yourself just so everyone is aware. Commissioner Jordan is online.
Okay. I'm Teresa Stewart. I'm the business
Teresa, sorry.
I'm the business manager over at Juvenile Court.
I'm Scott Stevens, I'm the probation manager.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll let you guys go ahead and start.
So we have 2 contracts that we're looking at right now that we are going to, hopefully you'll accept from the state of Washington. They are renewals. Our first contract is our consolidated. It's a block grant that they give us for several programs that we have at the juvenile court. And what they haven't done is given us the dollar amount yet, because legislators haven't finished and the funding formula hasn't been completed yet. So this is actually a bridge contract for consolidated contract, and it will be finished in September. So it's our best guess at this point. But there is movement. It's not completed. And our other contract is Alternatives to Detention, and it is a contract also the state of Washington, DCYF, and that contract is for kids who are sexually exploited. We work with Lutheran Social Services and St. Margaret's to house them there and provide services for them. So.
Any questions? Any questions? Okay.
Now?
I think you're good. No, I appreciate, all you guys are doing. And so the first one is just a bridging contract until the other.
Until the other contract is coming,
Perfect. Okay, no, thank you.
If I could just say one more thing. I'm retiring in a couple of months, and I just wanted to say how proud I am to be part of Spokane County and how grateful I am that you guys are leading us into this next decades and decades beyond that. For the people of Spokane, doing a great job. And I really appreciate that you don't see Spokane County as a community, you see them as individuals, people. We really do. So I just wanted to thank you for that, since I probably won't get a chance to hang out with that. Thanks a lot.
Well.
How many years?
33 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It will be a huge loss to us. She
Yeah.
has so much history of what's gone on through the years with us, and we rely on her so much. She'll be in tough shoes to fill.
Well, thank you so much for all.
No, because you've definitely been Bonnie's right-hand person and Tori's, and so
Four directors.
And you trained them well.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and so, thank you, because honestly, as we know, when we have our employee awards, you guys are the department that everybody envies, so you make it fun
cheer
over
so
there.
loud.
We like to have fun.
You guys like to, keep it light, and we know you're dealing with heavy issues over there, and so you guys do a great job,
Well, you're all invited to my go away party. It's gonna be on the 20th of September, so we'll see that coming.
Okay, make sure we get the invitations so we know.
You got it.
Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're back to Rob.
Okay.
You've got several things here now. Mike.
And I'm going to do my best to get it back on track, because items H and I are connected, and hopefully this will be a brief and to the point presentation here. If you just please go to the next slide. So I'm going to speak to the Voluntary Stewardship Program. We've come to the board a number of times. It's the Voluntary Stewardship Program is an alternative process that the county started engaging in since 2015, actually. That's when the board initially authorized this process. It's an alternative process to critical areas planning in agricultural areas. And what the county has been engaged with in a pass-through situation is we've been taking money from the Washington Conservation Commission on the order of $220,000 to $240,000 per biennium. And we've been passing that through to the Spokane Conservation District, who has been effectively facilitating this work. They've pulled together a work group that this board has reviewed and approved. That work group has over time developed a work plan that has been reviewed by the Washington Conservation Commission and has been approved. And they've been implementing that plan for a number of years now. And the plan does a lot of monitoring of vegetation and agricultural areas, and at the same time, working with the Conservation District. They're non-point source reduction professionals. These are people who go out and work with agricultural producers, both cattlemen and farmers, to implement projects, to reduce sediment load into rivers and to improve water quality. And so this process has been going on. I've been coming to the board on a biennial basis to renew both the Washington Conservation Commission contract and then the associated contract with the Spokane Conservation District. And we've been bringing them to you as two separate resolutions because they're two separate actions, but they're intricately related. It's a requirement of the Conservation Commission that when we sign their contract, we need to provide a copy of an executed contract with the Conservation District as well. So we've prepared the resolutions. They've been reviewed by Matt Koza and updated actually over the years, and as well as both the agreements. So I'm here to just give you a heads up that those agreements are on the agenda, and I seek your authorization for those.
Any questions for Rob? Seen any? No.
Great. Thank you.
That. Thank you. Okay, then that takes you to your next one.
Yeah, so thank you. So, yeah, this takes us back to, go to the next slide. I'm just waiting on them. So they're creating the salmon lead entity. We came to the board in mid-April. There was a representative of the Spokane River Forum, Andy Dunham, and a representative of the Spokane Tribe, and gave a presentation on the creation of a lead entity as part of the governor's salmon recovery efforts in Washington State. If we could go to the next slide, please. And so, as I noted, we originally came on the 17th. Then I went to work on preparing a resolution that was based on a similar resolution that had been adopted by the Stevens County Commissioners. I remind you that in order to establish this entity, the elected officials within the affected counties all need to approve it. And so that includes Lincoln, Stevens, and Spokane counties. And Lincoln and Stevens have already authorized that via resolution. And so I used that as a template. I received a comment with respect to hydroelectric facilities. And so we incorporated that into this resolution, which is forthcoming to authorize the creation of the salmon lead. And I do have, for your benefit, I have that presentation that was given in April attached to this presentation. If you'd like me to take you through that and tell you a little bit more about, or remind you about that process, I'm available to do that. I would remind you that by saying a few key points. This, what the tribes are looking at doing is to not introduce any endangered species as part of the work that they're looking at. This establishment of a lead entity does not resonate at all with removal of hydroelectric facilities anywhere within the Columbia River watershed at this point. This is focused on habitat restoration projects in the Spokane River watershed. And that would include the Spokane River, the Little Spokane River, and Hangman Creek. And yeah, that's really what it's about. It's really those. The process is that the tribe has already engaged in a technical process to start doing assessment of the rivers and looking at those opportunities. The next part of the process, should this be authorized, would be the creation of the Citizens Committee, which would be where we would have more active participation. Both the counties would participate, staff from environmental services would be asked to participate in that, as well as the rest of the community. And that really is more of a watershed planning process, the Citizens Committee. And that's where we would have opportunity then to participate in that. But, you know, what I see as opportunity here is for potential projects for, even in our roads group, to replace culverts, fish barriers, things like that. There will be opportunities for, for Spokane County to participate in projects that can improve water quality. I mean, this really, a lot of this is water quality improvement projects as well as habitat. So again, that resolution has been prepared and is what we're on track to bring that to the board for agenda.
So as we develop this lead entity, so is Stevens County, if Stevens County already passed their resolution?
Yes.
So are they part of, is it a regional or is it just the county, or I guess that's what I just.
It's a regional process. The technical committee at this point includes regional experts. There are folks from, all the counties are invited to participate. Scientists more at this point. The citizens committee will also be a regional process where all of the affected parties are at the table.
Thank you.
So the lead for Stevens County was Wes McCart, and the lead for Lincoln County was Scott Hutzel, and I've talked to both of them at LRS about, their due diligence that they did when they were looking at this program. Both counties have already adopted the program and weighed in, but when I raised the issue about, eliminating hydroelectric dams, they said that was not part of their review, and they did not consider that when they were doing it, doing their initial assessment. And then I did follow up about a month later with Wes, and Wes said he's been assured that that is not part of the initiative, and it is, as indicated, about restoration of habitat. The one element that I continue to have, and Rob touched on it, is what the impact will be on our road department. Because with the elimination of culverts, which, the west side is embroiled in this process now. I think they're now at $4 or $5 billion of investment to eliminate culverts, and that's at the state level. They're not doing anything. They're leaving the counties to address county culverts, and that's been the financial stress on counties and stuff. So those are the only two concerns that I continue to have is one, impact on culverts for our road department, and is that in fact going to get us in the same mess that counties on the west side of the state are in, and then assurances that it doesn't, two programs don't collide with regard to elimination of hydroelectric dams as part of the initiative to restore salmon.
Well, with respect to the hydroelectric issue, I too have heard from representatives of the tribe, repeatedly said, no, that's not what we're about.
Okay.
And they, to a point where they're sensitive about it. Just I don't know how many times I need to say that.
Yeah.
But again, that's, we go by their word.
Yeah. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But secondly, the effect on the roads, what my understanding is it's not so much elimination of culverts, it's to be able to modify these culverts so that they're no longer fish barriers. They're no longer, barriers for the fish to be able to continue to move upstream.
Yeah. So what that means is that you've got a culvert that's 2 feet in diameter, and you're going to replace it now, but because it is part of the path for salmon, that 2-foot diameter culvert now becomes an 8-foot diameter culvert, or because of a culvert, it becomes a bridge. And then you've got all of the increased cost we end up fighting with this at Crab, because the counties will come back and then say, well, we want to do, bridge replacement on this county road, and it goes from, a 3-foot diameter culvert to, 12-foot bridge, and costs increase dramatically, and that's when it circles back and becomes a problem for counties and stuff. So, on its face, I agree that we need to eliminate barriers, but there also has to be some kind of middle ground, because we can't afford to do what their west side is doing. I mean, it's killing counties on the west side.
When we keep at Wasac, I mean, it's on our legislative agenda.
Yeah, it's one of the top priorities.
Local and federal,
Yeah.
to talk about that, because once you put that fish, passage in for, you've redone the culvert at the state level, there's a county road or there's a county culvert up the street. So it's an issue, and it's definitely a priority legislatively, so.
I think the really good things that we need to be mindful of with this, as Kyle and Rob and Matt have looked at it, they've highlighted potential opportunities for accessing funding that could address some of those in a road that never would have met our threshold because of low volumes on it, to be able to actually get after those and get some funding to support those things. So that's kind of maybe the silver lining in this, that presents some opportunities that weren't there before, but definitely something we have to be mindful of and make sure we have a balanced, fiscally prudent approach to it.
Kyle, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. And Scott kind of echoed my comment that I wanted to say, which is that this is an access to a funding source for us. Some of the culverts that we have, we would like to address, that are on our rural roadways, and they're servicing only, a dozen, 2 dozen homes. And even just a standard culvert replacement being a couple $100,000 at a minimum, it's really a challenge for us to prioritize that investment for what it serves. We don't have a huge log of culvert replacements in fish passage areas. And, we're all watching with sticker shock what's happening on the west side. And most of those are, I don't know if it's most or all of that is related to ESA salmon. And so I think at this point, we're seeing it as an opportunity more than a threat, but your eyes are more astute than ours when it comes to what could happen regionally.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much.
David.
Yep.
Thank you. I knew he wasn't going to, but I didn't know.
We're gonna bring David and Brenda in. Got 2 people joining. Okay, commissioners, this is kind of a fun topic to share. As you recall, back end of May. Yep, I'll introduce them. End of May, we had went to the PRC. Our team of folks presented the ask to do GCCM alternative delivery for the Vista Stadium. We got really good feedback from the committee, got approved to do it. And so right after the PRC approved, we briefed the board and went out with an RFP process to solicit firms to be able to help us kind of assess who we're going to select for it. So I'm going to introduce David Bodine. David is our owner's rep with Turner and Townsend Heery. Did I get that correct? The right one?
Nailed it.
So our owner's rep, David, is our expert on GCCM and alternative delivery process. So he's alongside of us, helping to make sure that we're following the right processes, interpreting all of the requirements correctly, and making sure we abide by those. And then Brenda in our procurement department has been helping us with the RFP process. So we sent out RFPs. We got 7 back. Very good qualified companies, 6 local and 1 national, which was very exciting for us to get a national interest in this. So the group of companies that did apply or did submit their statement of qualifications was Hunt Group in connection with AECOM. I think AECOM had bought them recently. So it was AECOM Hunt, Locals were Garco Construction, Graham Construction, Halby Builders, Kilgore Construction, Leidig Construction, and Walker Construction. So as David walked us through this process with really awesome support from Brenda, we took the 7, they submitted statements of qualifications. We had an evaluation committee that was set up based on our shared expense agreement with Spokane Indians. It was 3 representatives that Spokane County selected, 2 that the Indians selected. So on the committee was Kyle Tuig, myself, Bill Helbig from the Valley, Public Works Director, Chris Duff, and Jerry Gemmel. So we all reviewed the statements of qualifications collectively, and then from that, 4 companies rose to the top of the scoring. Those were Leidig, Garco, Kilgore, Walker, and Graham. So all 4 of those we invited for in-person interviews. We spent a full day out at Parks and Rec office a couple weeks ago. They all provided their in-person interviews to them. We then did a second round of scoring, and then invited 2 to provide pricing proposals to us, and that was Leidig and Garco based on the scoring. They did that. They were opened up yesterday afternoon, right? Yep. And so from that, the recommended firm for our GCCM contractor is Leidig Construction. We had 2 very strong applicants all the way through it, and we're excited about Leidig. So we would be recommending Leidig for awarding the GCCM contract to, which fits really nicely into our schedule. If you go to Ron, the next, I think it's the next 2-second slide. One more. Oh, one more. Sorry, 3rd. So this is our timeline that we had shared back in early April, and we're right on track. July 10th is when we open, briefing you all today, and then our plan would be to have it on your consent agenda to award the GCCM contract next week. And I wanted David to join. He knows this stuff. He's been doing it for many years, and if there are certain questions on the process, how we got to here, he's much more adept than I am to be able to answer any of those things. But questions that you had on how we got to where we got to and the recommended award.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in here. So have the Indians met their financial threshold yet in terms of the match?
Yes, so we've got a schedule of what the contributions are supposed to be, and the first date was on March 8th. $1 million the Indians had contributed, and then 2 weeks later the county matched the $1 million. And then their next date for delivering $4 million is in 3 days. That's 7/14. And then the county contributes the other $4 million 2 weeks later. So they've indicated they're on track to do that. So by the time we get to just closely after award, we'll have $10 million in our shared expense account with the county. And then their next target dates are going to be September, which is going to be the $600,000 that is the amount that the Valley had from the previous fairgrounds building that was then repurposed towards Belfour Park, and then the rest of the $600,000 towards the Vista Stadium. And then they'll have another 2 tranches due in January of 24 of $1.2 million, and June of 24 of $1.2 million. So that's what the schedule of contributions are that they'll be able to meet, which we believe will meet our schedule of needs for the construction. And then the other piece is the $5.8 million from the state that was approved in the legislative session here.
The 600,000 that you had 600 and change you mentioned, that's also state capital funds though, wasn't it?
Yep, that came
So
from.
we wouldn't match that.
That was with the Valley. So we actually let them be
But those are
within
state
the.
capital funds.
Yep.
That we said we wouldn't match.
We didn't explicitly.
Yeah, I thought
As I
we talked
recollected.
about the 5.5, that the capital funds that were coming for the stadiums,
Okay.
how they got
I
together.
believe it,
Was it?
which was state capital funds.
Yeah.
Right, but that, I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted that what this,
We weren't gonna match state funds is what we had agreed on.
We weren't, Commissioner Carnes, but because these were received by the Valley, we looked at that as saying that's a local contribution because they actually advocated to have those things moved into the from the Fair and Expo building into the Vista Stadium building. So we can relook at that thing. It's a small amount of dollars compared to everything else, but I think the Indians are well on their way to raising the money that they're committed to raise throughout this process. So does that answer your question, Commissioner French?
It did. I did not anticipate that it was be a pay-as-you-go because we'll have monies invested, and then if they don't meet their threshold, then we are the bridge to nowhere kind of deal with the project, and I worry that then will come back on the county. Obviously you think that they're gonna meet the threshold, so.
They know what their commitment is, and my belief is they're
I know they know
more
what the
invested.
commitment is. I'm worried about making it.
Yeah.
You know, if they think they're gonna make it, then you have confidence in them.
They've given us every voice of support and belief that they're going to make this because they know they have to make it. Commissioner Walton.
So I was just gonna ask, what, if you could share a little bit about what stood out about Leidig and who were the finalists, Leidig and Garco? And, you know, what were the things that those two firms brought to the table, and then, how, you know, the ultimate decision, if you, I don't know how much detail you can give, but.
Oh, we can give as much as we can. So the nice part in GCCM, you're basing it on a three-part process, as Mr. Simmons talked about, right? So your qualifications is the interview and is the price. And as part of GCCM, you can weight those accordingly as to what's the most important to you. So we had 40% of the total points was based on the qualifications, 50% on the interview, because we wanted to see who they really are and what the interaction, and 10% on the price. Hold them accountable within the pricing, but it's not as big of a component. What was interesting is after the interviews, all of us were talking afterwards, and we saw exactly what we expected to see. Garco being the local team across the street, giving you that warm, friendly, we know baseball, we're your locals, we're here to help you, and we're there, we're gonna be those guys. It was really comforting as a committee. We all felt like, yeah, they're gonna take care of us. They're Garco Construction, they're the local guys, they're gonna take care of us. Leidig came in wanting this job really heavy, brought in more of a, I don't know if professionalism is the right term, but really like, we're gonna look at virtual design and construction. How are we gonna show this visually to the spectators, to the community? So really implementing in virtual design and construction into it. Both brought really strong project managers, really strong superintendents, and how they were gonna be able to react. And it was just, there's just a comfort in an interview of like, I can work with that guy. And we kind of got that feel a little bit. But at the end of the day, walking out of the interview, they were within 2 points of each other. So there was not much in the way of separation. Those two rose to the top. So as Mr. Simmons said, Graham and Walker were in the mix, but they kind of fell behind after the interview. Those two rose to the top because I think it's the professionalism, the understanding of our community, the teams they put together, and just that, hey, we're gonna get this job done no matter what it takes for you. So, and then the pricing just created that final separation.
Yeah, I think we would have been very comfortable with either Garco or Leidig. They did really well through the statement of qualifications and the interview process. One was a little bit ahead in the statement of qualifications. The other one went a little bit ahead in the interview process. And then pricing was really what it came down to the difference.
Yeah.
But it was a really close evaluation.
Very competitive numbers, very competitive process.
Both very well versed and experienced in alternative delivery, GCCM.
Yeah, so we went through an extensive process. We were selecting a consultant for the airport, and Garco's doing that, and they not only are on budget, ahead of schedule, but they were able to find about $4.5 million worth of savings for us. And so that was, I mean, we are exceedingly happy with Garco and stuff. I've not worked on this capacity with Leidig, so I don't have anything to offer, but boy, Garco has been hitting it out of the park as far as the airport's concerned. And the airport
airport project is not an easy project.
Kyle, I saw, Kyle, you had your hand raised.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to add one quick comment about, I mean, one of the Leidig's more impressive attributes is their history and attention to schedule. And with schedule being such a dominant component of this project, they really have the strongest track record in the region and demonstrated as much during the process.
I mean, they're one of two, both of them have very strong
And Kyle
abilities.
specifically talking to the First Interstate Bank through that project, Leidig did a phenomenal job on the design build there and brought a project in that was really extremely tight on schedule and brought that in on time. So I know that's what he's referring to, and it's a definite success, no doubt, for Leidig. And we're doing a GCCM with them right now in Grant County, and they're doing a great job there. They are, I'd say those two are you got the cream of the crop coming for this project.
So the last 10% then you said was of what you take into consideration is the actual final numbers?
Yes, it's, so what they bid to us is their, what they call specified general conditions, which is their known cost to do the work. Their superintendent, their project manager, that type of stuff, and then their fee that they're gonna get on the job. So that's what they bid to us, and we take that and calculate that in. So and Leidig actually went lower than Garco on a cost basis.
So are we within our projected budget at this point in time?
If they know what the budget is, that's the beauty about GCCM is, here's our budget.
They're not bidding anything to actually construct yet. Their bid was strictly over a duration of time, here's gonna be our costs for management to do the job. We have to still publicly bid through GCCM all the actual components of work.
Subcontractors. Yep. All right. The other thing, and David has worked with both these companies extensively too, so he's got really great familiarity with them. And they both actually highlighted, we have a occupied site. And we have, during parts of the year, it'll be fully functioning as a baseball stadium, and other parts of the year won't be. So both of them really also highlighted their ability to work in occupied sites and demonstrated it from past experience as well. So if there's no more questions, this would be up on your consent agenda next week for awarding the result of the GCCM RFP process to Leidig.
Thank you. You know, it's, yeah, good job. I know it's a process to go through, so appreciate all your efforts. Thank you. You're up next.
Well, I'm continuing, huh? Okay. Okay, so it's our continued conversation around changes to your meeting schedules and agenda items. So kind of a quick update for where we're at. You've obviously already moved to the new meeting schedules where strategic planning meetings are on Mondays, 1st and 3rd, although based on holidays and stuff, it's been 2nd, 3rd, or 1st and 4th or something like that. So those are already going. Your BOCC briefing meetings are now on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. and then renaming the what's formerly the consent agenda to your regular agenda to regular legislative agenda, which is your Tuesday afternoons for actions, public hearings, etc. We've then been working with our teams to make sure that all of the items in your briefings have an agenda cover sheet, leveraging what's already in the system today for people to, all of our teams to be able to put their stuff into there, publish those along with documentation. Commissioner Jordan had brought up a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago now, around enabling these things to be able to be simultaneously published to the public when we publish the documents. We've been working with our teams to make sure they're where we can, including draft or recommendations on the briefing schedules, not on your legislative session, because your legislative is where you're taking actions on. So we've been working with them on draft. We've also got kind of a statement ready to go to put on the briefing agenda that says these documents are considered in draft form for discussion and consideration purposes only. So I think we're in a pretty good position to be able to identify some of those or have the things that were identified by commissioners as concerns to make sure that we are adequately labeling documents as drafts so it's clear to the public that these aren't in final form, they still could be changed, it's just for discussion purposes only. So that's where we're at, and I think where we're now at is are the commissioners ready to take action on this and put it on your consent agenda and then begin following what the new kind of code requirements are.
I think so. I think, you know, like I said, my concern was just making sure that people are aware that it's draft and all of that, that it's not a final item, you know, as presentations are put out there and all of that.
I will highlight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having it move forward. I mean, if we along the way, if we have little minor suggestions for how the agenda sheet can be improved, we could just keep working on that with our IT team, right? Like maybe having the date at the top might be helpful. Just when you're looking for a document, the agenda sheet, I don't think has a date at the top or something. Anyway, just little things like that make it easier to follow. But I think we should move forward and then we can always adjust the agenda sheet, you know, to make it better as time goes on.
Yeah.
It just looks, you know, like you're like, well, is this an agenda sheet from last week or this week? Or so just putting little things like the date and.
I think those could easily be incorporated.
Commissioner Jordan?
I just wanted to mention that Mr. Maceo had drafted some additional language that's basically 2 sentences that we could include as part of the changes if we wanted to. I can send it out to folks, but it basically says essentially any drafts should be appropriately marked. And so if that helps people feel comfortable that that's in policy, that's certainly fine with me. And I just wanted to make folks aware. May not be necessary, but if anyone thinks it'd be beneficial, we certainly have some ideas from Jim.
Thank you.
The other piece I will add, just for the commissioner's awareness, is sometimes we will, when grants are coming through from other state agencies, it's in a PDF form. We don't have the ability to modify that. So while our documents will say that we're providing are going to be in draft form, that grant is not adjustable. So I think the bookends on both sides will indicate that everything's draft, but that document specifically, we wouldn't have the ability to put a draft on it. But I think we have the caveats everywhere else in the agenda sheet where it says they're considered draft form. I think we've got everything we can do to make it clear to the public. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we certainly can put this on the agenda for next week as well.
Okay, all right, very good. And Commissioner Jordan, is that meaning everything you were hoping?
It is, and I appreciate the feedback and effort by the team to make it workable. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at miscellaneous. Scott, you've got.
I have one more. Sorry to be consuming a lot of time here. Don't oftentimes get a ribbon cutting date 3 to 4 months out in advance for your calendars, but the sheriff's has been trying to organize an official ribbon cutting event with the Air Force. Air Force happens to have some folks coming into town on this date, October 19th. And so they are asking whether or not a 1 o'clock on October 19th would work for a ribbon cutting out at the Small Arms Range.
STA.
All right, smack in the middle of it.
Ribbon cutting's at 1, STA's at 1:30.
Oh, yeah, that won't work. They did indicate initially 11.
That worked great for me.
And they have the Air Force has like a morning briefing that runs from 9 to 11. So perhaps we could, what would be ideal, squeezing something in somewhere closer to 11:30 noon?
We can make 11:30 noon work on the 11th.
On the 19th?
No, on the 11th.
18th.
No, 19 is what we're talking about.
It was at 11. On the 19th.
So so I got airport work from 9 to 11. So what time did you say you were gonna start?
Well, it was 1. They did say they could do as early as 11. So I'm kind of looking, is there a window between when you have STA at 1:30, you got airport board until 11, Commissioner French?
I could always.
11:30?
Yeah, 11:30 would be great.
Okay. Why don't I suggest back to them 11:30 noon start time? If that works.
Yeah, I've got a hold for like a potential civic leader.
Okay.
Like, so I'm either here or I'm not.
Okay. All right. I will give them some feedback.
Sorry. When I was meeting with Jeff, he indicated that they were also going to be looking at doing a dry run of the facility before the grand opening, and that he was contemplating inviting electeds to be part of that dry run. And so you might follow up with him and see if that is still on schedule, because that he was talking about maybe doing something like on a weekend or some other day and stuff. And I think, I don't know that all the board would appreciate that, but I think that several of us would be part of the kind of dry run of the facility, seeing how it functions.
I would tell the commissioners we want to see. I mean, it's a pretty fun and new community asset.
Yeah, I'll share with you offline some of the functions they were thinking about doing as part of the dry run.
Okay. I know Chief Ellis has been primarily kind of the lead with some of these things with the Air Force and Jeff, so I'll float that back to him as well. Okay. That's all I had. Other miscellaneous was covered by George.
Chris yesterday said we had a executive session, right?
Yes, indeed. I have one item to bring under pending potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I. This will involve the board, CEO Scott Simmons, myself, Mike Sparber, and probably Randy Bischoff. And I think probably 20 minutes.
20 minutes, and the purpose again, I'm sorry, was
Pending potential litigation.
I have a pending and potential litigation, 5 to 10 minutes, same group.
Okay, we're gonna say 5 minutes. Okay, and
No action needed on mine.
and
No action.
so commissioners, Scott, Sparber. and Randy Bischoff. And Chris. Okay, so we're gonna go into executive session for 2 pending and potential litigation items. The first one's gonna be 20 minutes. It'll include all the commissioners, Randy Bischoff, Scott Simmons, Mike Sparber, no actions, Chris Anderson, and no actions to be taken. The second one will be for 5 minutes, pending potential litigation, all the same people in here. So after 25 minutes, we anticipate that we will adjourn for the morning, as no other items will be coming before the board and no action will be taken out of that executive session.